Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Innal hamdalillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. To proceed, brothers and sisters and friends, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. Another quick note, brothers and sisters, I just want to give you some advice. We all want to be of the muhsinun. We want to be people who are noble, people who have good characters for the sake of God, not for the sake of our egos, not for the sake of social pressure or anybody else, not to enslave ourselves to other people's perceptions and expectations, but rather to be enslaved to Allah, to have a servanthood, to be at service with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created us. And so we want to achieve this state. Now, this state can only be achieved if we have certain characteristics and we build them within us. We have a kind of a change of our psychological disposition, and that can only happen by reading the Quran and trying to understand it, by doing dhikr, by remembering God, by praying, by doing the night prayer, by making dua, because Allah controls the hearts. So many different spiritual tools we have in accordance to the Quran and the prophetic traditions of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at our disposal to shape our personalities, but also reflecting upon the Quran and understanding what are the characteristics of the people of great goodness, of the muhsinun, of those who are really close to Allah. Understanding the characteristics will give us a kind of reference point and yardstick to try and achieve what they have achieved from a behavioral or psychological or spiritual perspective. So I want to go and just concentrate on Yusuf alayhi salam, Joseph, upon whom be peace. An amazing story, the greatest story in chapter 12 of the Quran. I want to read out what Yusuf says, okay, to his father. And I just want to extract a gem for you, which I think is going to be quite important in the way we interact with other people, inshallah. So in chapter 12 verse 100, the Quran says, "And he raised his parents upon the throne, and they bowed to him in prostration. And he said," Yusuf alayhi salam, "O my father, this is the explanation of my vision of his dream of before. My Lord made it haqq, a reality. And he," referring to Allah, "was ahsani, he was good to me when he took me out of the prison and brought you here from Bedouin life after Satan, shaitan, had induced estrangement between me and my brothers. Indeed, my Lord is subtle in what he wills. Indeed, it is he who is knowing the wise." Why does Yusuf alayhi salam only attribute God's goodness, which can refer to God's mercy, in the prison? Because when we read this chapter, and that's your homework to read the chapter, if you want to call it homework. If we read chapter Joseph, the 12th chapter of the Quran, we see there were three major calamities concerning the life of Yusuf alayhi salam, Joseph upon whom be peace. Number one, he was thrown in the well. Number two, he was placed in the prison. Number three, the seduction or the attempted seduction by the wife of Al-Aziz. Why did he not mention to his father that God was good to him in the well and that God was good to him in the palace with the wife of Al-Aziz? But he just mentions the well, the prison. Why? Well, we could do some tadabbur, we could do some reflection and really realize that in actual fact, if you look at the kind of theme of the chapter, one of the themes it talks about those who do good, the muhsinun, and attributes Yusuf alayhi salam with this status. He was of the muhsinun, he was of the great characters, the noble characters. And a noble great character never remembers past wrongs if they've been forgiven, to the point that he wouldn't even attribute God's goodness to it. Because in the well, his brothers, and if you read the story, ask Yusuf alayhi salam for forgiveness. The wife of Al-Aziz asked Yusuf alayhi salam for forgiveness and realized what she did was wrong. But in the prison, that never happened. So it shows to be a noble character when dealing with our families, our friends, our parents, our loved ones. No matter what they've done, if they've asked for forgiveness and you forgave them, then it doesn't exist anymore. It's meaningless. And Yusuf alayhi salam is showing us even to the point where he would not even attribute God's goodness and mercy to that. Which we know it is because of Allah's mercy, but it's to show the nobility of such a character. So for instance, say you've had a really bad relationship with your father. He's never said he loved you for 10 years. There's been a kind of hard time at home, but things are getting better. And he somehow asked for forgiveness, somehow you guys patched things up. Whatever the case may be. It could be with your loved ones, with your wife, with your husband. Once it's forgiven and forgotten, it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist. And this is the amazing characteristic of Yusuf alayhi salam, where he wouldn't even attribute God's goodness to that fact that when he's talking about it, because it's to show that once it's forgiven, it's totally forgotten to the point where you even not utter it in your reflections of your life, or you don't even utter it in your normal conversations, and to the point, as Yusuf alayhi salam, you don't attribute it to God's goodness, although we know it's because of Allah's mercy and rahmah. But when you're dealing with others, you just ignore it. Imagine we all did this in our families, to the point where not only have you forgiven, but you've forgotten, but to the point, brothers, sisters and friends, that you don't use what they did against them, and it doesn't shape your perspective and your perception on that person. That's the characteristic of the muhsinun. Inshallah, I pray to Allah that we all achieve that state, and hopefully this gem from the Quran has given us some kind of reference point on what we have to do to achieve that. So maybe for another piece of homework, remember or try and reflect on something that happened in your family or with your friends, and that they asked for forgiveness. And if you threw it in their face and reminded them of what they did, you should ask for their forgiveness now. And promise within yourself that not only have you forgotten it, but it hasn't shaped your memory bank to judge that person in the future, and that you don't mention it at all. Inshallah. And hopefully in the future you'll be like this with other people. As the Quran says elsewhere, forgive and overlook. Assalamu alaikum.